Hola, mi gente. Welcome to the Latinos Unidos project. My name is Omar Fernandez Candelaria. I am the creator and host of this podcast. If it's your first time, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking the channel out. And for those of you that obviously is not your first time, welcome. Thanks again for stopping by. I just want to say I'm sorry for the hiatus of uploading episodes to the podcast. It's been a hectic 2022, and in a good way. I got a new job. I got a new apartment. So it's been great. I also want to give a shout out and a major thank you to Zach Sowers from the Zach Sowers Film and Video for donating the backdrop that you see now. I need to iron it, as you can tell, but again, major thank you. So yeah, without further ado, I have a really special guest today. She is from the beautiful city of Lancaster, PA. Her roots are from the Caribbean, as she is half Puerto Rican and half Dominican. She moved upon graduation from high school. She moved to Ithaca, New York to attend the Ithaca College, where she double majored in Spanish and journalism. There, she actually started her own podcast called The Brown Girl Chronicles, where she talks about her own experiences, navigating the world, while also inviting guests to discuss a variety of topics. You can find her podcast in a variety of streaming platforms, such as Spotify and SoundCloud. So I'll check that out. I'll have all of these links in the description down below. She's also a book enthusiast. She has her own Bookstagram with her sister, where they share, books I've been reading, from the local bookstore hauls and such. So go check that out if you're looking for new reading material. And also, my guest is the co-founder of Lancaster Changemakers, which is a local organization focused on, empowerment through education. They are a POC-led organization educating the community to create tangible change in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And you can find them on Instagram at Lank4Change. And again, I'll have all of this in the description. So without further ado, please help me give a warm welcome to Sobeida Rosa. Hello, hello. Go ahead, take a seat right there. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good. It's a beautiful day today.
Yes.
It's a little cold, but here we are.
The morning.
It is the morning. Well, thanks for stopping by.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I just want to give the audience here sort of a backstory of how we sort of indirectly met each other for the first time.
Okay.
And how so
I don't remember this.
So okay, Angel Rosa is your cousin,
yes.
right? He's my stepbrother. But I think it was last year he had a graduation party.
You were there?
I was there. And I didn't know that you were there, which is insane.
There were a lot of people there, to be honest.
There was a lot of people.
But I was
there.
part of the loud group.
Okay, yeah.
Like of Rosas.
In that corner over there. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Oh my God.
I remember that. But I don't think I actually, introduced myself or actually talked to you at that party.
I didn't introduce myself to anyone.
Oh yeah, no, it's all good. I was just there to have a good time,
Right.
and of course to celebrate Angel Rosa's
Right.
graduation from Millersville. But yeah, so then we just through a conversation that I had with Angel, asking me who I'm gonna interview today, and I said Sobeida. She's like, oh, what's her last name?
Because there's so many of us out there.
Yeah, right. And so you guys are cousins, and small world. Lancaster's a small place.
Tiny town.
As tiny town. But so I know we were chatting off camera, but of course, so you're from Lancaster, right? Born and raised.
Yep.
So yeah, just I guess tell me a little bit about your story, how it was growing up in Lancaster and all of that.
Everyone says, tell me about your story. And I'm like, where do I begin?
Sure.
Yeah, so born and raised in Lancaster, I think, so let me say Lancaster City, because everyone says Lancaster. And when we were talking off camera, Omar said he went to Penn Manor. So,
yeah.
But
Boo. I know, boo. I know.
But living in Lancaster City, I really feel I took all the diversity and all
Yep.
the just cultural exchanges for granted, because I went to Ithaca College, which is a PWI, a predominantly white institution,
Mhm.
and I have never felt more like brown or more non-white than when I went to a place that had all white people.
Yeah.
And in Lancaster, we have that kind of same structure where it's like if you don't go into the city, everywhere else is just like mostly white.
Mhm.
But I didn't have that until I was 18.
Okay.
So all my life, I grew up just around all these different people that had different, diverse perspectives and,
Yeah.
lived experiences than I did.
No, that's
Um,
amazing. Sorry, I don't mean to
No, you're
interrupt here. So I was sort of the opposite. So my whole life up until I went to Millersville. So up until I was like 21, 22. Even now, I guess, being Latino in Lancaster, right? Obviously, there's Lancaster City and then the surrounding areas. So what my come up, I didn't have that. I didn't really have that diverse sort of people around me. I always felt the outcast at a very young age growing up. And, and I'm better now, but, there are moments that I still feel that sometimes. And so, kind of your experience in Ithaca, I sort of had a similar experience in Madison, Wisconsin, where I went for grad school, where even though I am used to just being sort of the only Latino around, there I felt it even more just because there's not a lot of Hispanics in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But then to be in a place where it is very predominantly white, I just felt really, really alone. And honestly, it was a great experience. I met a lot of great people, but I think it's important to be surrounded by people of different cultures, experiences to just better yourself, I think, and to be cognizant of the world.
Yeah, I definitely think it helps just round you out as a person, and then also understand, like, I feel like when you grow up around different types of people, you have more empathy or sympathy for other people and like what they go through.
Yeah.
And like even, growing up, even though I did grow up in the city, all my life I identified as Latina or Latino. And it wasn't until I went to college and I took this course called Black Feminist Thought where I really honed into my identity as being Afro Latina and being Black and like and having that identity as sort of like, oh, Latino is not a race. Latino is not something that I can identify as racially. And then feeling comfortable in that identity for so long, it was really, I went through like an identity crisis of sorts.
Yeah.
When I was 18, when my like Black professor was like, "You're Black," and I was like, "Who? Me?" And I was really shook because I think we Latinos, we really are in this safe space of Latinidad and it being very ambiguous as far as, race goes. And I think I've done a lot of unlearning in the past 4 to 6 years since I was in college. Not that identifying as Latino is bad, but recognizing your privilege within that ethnicity and within that identity is super important.
Absolutely.
And like, even though I identify as Afro-Latina now, understanding that I live and breathe as like an ethnically ambiguous like woman is also another privilege that I have because I'm not, phenotypically like Black or like some people wouldn't say that. Like I get people, they're like, "Are you Indian? Like, are you this? Are you that?"
Yeah.
People are so curious about me. I've never felt more popular until I went to a PWI and everyone asked me, "Where are you from?"
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, I'm from Pennsylvania." And they're like, "But where are you really from?" And I'm like,
Dang. Yeah.
Like, my mother? Like, I don't know what the answer is.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But yeah, so definitely like, and especially coming on this podcast, it's called Latinos Out Loud. I definitely have like all the thoughts and opinions about, even just identifying as that in that word.
No, that's it is interesting. I think, you can sit down and have lectures about just the word Latino and sort of what that represents within it, right? And I think sort of going off to what you were saying, I'm a white passing, white Latino, right? So of course within that, perhaps there are privileges that other Latinas don't experience, of course, which is definitely is messed up. But just us as Hispanics, it's just interesting. I don't know, because like when you're like filling out forms and stuff where it asks you, okay, are you what's your ethnicity or whatever, is white, Black, whatever. I don't know. It always tricks me, I guess, because it's like, okay, I am white passing, but at the same time, there, of course, like darker Latinos within my own family too, that are close, like blood relatives to me. But I don't know. But going back to sort of what you were saying in your college years, you mentioned that it was sort of, well, you felt popular when you first got there,
but in a bad way.
In a
like
bad
it
way. No, of
wasn't
course.
good.
No.
I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it.
No, of course. Because I think a lot of people are also very ignorant to a lot of things when it comes to race and just people of other backgrounds. Like my sister right now is a freshman at University of Pittsburgh, and of course it's also a predominantly white institution, of course. And a lot of people ask her too, like, "Hey, where are you from?" No, like, where are you actually from too? And I think my sister perhaps is also going through a phase of like, how do I identify myself, or like, who am I? But you talked about sort of like, it was sort of like a wake up call, I guess. But like, how hard was it for you though?
So
like,
hard.
I can imagine.
It was not a fun experience, and it's so hard. Sorry, as a young person to be, or at least feel like you're so secure within your identity, and then have someone tell you, whether good intentioned or not, that you're like lying, or that it's not correct. As far as like when people tell you like, oh, where are you actually from? And it's just like the implication that you think that I'm lying about my own identity and how I'm like telling you that I identify, or like, my background. It's just very jarring. Also, that people have the audacity to like tell me how to identify, or I mean, not to how to identify, but they're just very curious. And like, one, what does it matter to you? Like, how does it affect you in those areas? But then on the side of like being Latino and like recognizing privilege, I think when we don't recognize our privilege, that like perpetuates this idea of that like othering. Like you said, you maybe you're white passing, but for a lot of Latinos, they don't like to say that, because being white or white American implies privilege, generational wealth, all these things, which like immigrant backgrounds, that doesn't always lend itself to the case. But when we talk about privilege, it's not about you inherently being wealthy or you inherently having no problems. It's that your skin color doesn't create an extra added barrier to the things that you're experiencing.
Right.
So it's just a layered situation all around. And then being, 18, 19, 20 years old, and like trying to do all of this and then go to class and like have a social life and like have crushes on people. It's too much. Like
it is that. Yeah.
So it definitely was not easy. I think it's better now that I'm like 23.
That was gonna be my follow-up question.
Yeah.
Is obviously now being back in Lancaster, having that experience in college, how have you navigated that now?
I think one of the things is having open and honest conversations with people, especially people in my family, people that are close to me that I consider friends, and then doing that work. And obviously that work isn't easy either. Because again, if you've lived your life up until a certain point doing and saying certain things, and then you're automatically like switching up, I guess, people are just like taken aback sometimes. But I think like having those constant conversations and opening up has really been a good way to navigate those situations, and also being firm in that identity, and also talking about identity, like including sexuality and gender, and the ways in which people identify in those ways. Like in college, I discovered that I was bisexual, and then I like came out to my parents, and that wasn't easy. But my mom's on her own journey. But
okay.
Yeah, just like even with those things, it's like still having those open conversations with people, talking with them, and just seeing how they receive it. But it's definitely a lot of work.
I was going to say, I mean, it's not easy too. I mean, I find myself sometimes, it's hard for me to sometimes have those honest conversations, I guess, because I guess it's an insecurity almost of me, like maybe feeling less than the person I'm talking to, whether it be like even close friends of mine, that are white. But I think it's very important too, though, to just have an honest conversation with people around you, but I think also with yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
think and sort of see perhaps where I don't know, you need to educate yourself more. Definitely, I mean, I'm on my own journey too of just educating myself with the world. I think every day is just a new lesson learned. Um, but speaking specifically of like within the Latino community, I know you mentioned that it was hard to have a conversation with your parents. I think either, I don't know, machismo and just also going back to, I think, how Latin countries sort of instill this, um, yeah, machismo, or just like, right, like, I don't know.
I
It's
think,
hard.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's hard too because there is like back at home in the home country, like
Yeah,
there is a certain societal standard, but then it's like
right.
we're not at home. We're in the United States. We're in America.
Right.
So when I'm speaking about my lived experience and all this stuff, it's within the United States context. So
Right.
even I know some Latinos don't, who may look white or may pass as white, don't identify as such. It's because their lived experiences doesn't mirror
Mm,
again what like a white American is.
yeah.
And again, it's not about mirroring that. It's about the unspoken privileges that
Yeah.
you have within the United States. And I think it's really important to make sure that context is like
Hmm.
said within the United States. Because
Yeah.
obviously, well, not obviously, but if people don't know, in the Dominican Republic, there are very much like anti LGBTQ laws and
Hmm.
stuff. So, like, if I were to be my open, honest, authentic self over there, that would create problems with me. That is like,
Sure.
so I'm speaking as a place of privilege from the United States and like talking about, my issues and my struggles and not invalidating them and not making them any less
Yeah.
than, but within the context of the United States, these are the issues. But if I was in Dominican Republic,
It
it
just
would be a whole different.
it'd be really it'd be really different.
Exactly. So I think that's really important when we have these conversations too. It's just that, we're in the United States and this is how it is in the United States.
Right.
Um and unlearning and educating yourself is like I think the most important thing that everyone can do. Like,
Mhm.
and when we approach these conversations, like I don't know everything. I'm still unlearning. I don't know everything either. But
Same.
and coming to that knowing that I'm a little ignorant about this thing or a little ignorant about that thing, and just like I think again being honest and transparent. But definitely
Absolutely.
when talking to my parents, it's like very I have to approach it, con calma, like
Con
just just
calmadita.
just knowing that they're not gonna get it
Right.
immediately, and I'm just like, okay, if I mention if I mention like race or something,
Yeah.
and just knowing like this will be a 5-minute conversation, like that's what I have to give to them for
Uh-huh.
the day, then I'm like, okay, I did something.
That's funny.
But
Yeah.
I already know it's not gonna be.
No, I've had my share experiences of conversations like that with my own parents too, and it just kind of being hard. I think because so my dad's from Mexico, my mom's Puerto Rican, and they both came from their respective countries at a young age here in Lancaster. Um, so again, like I'm not talking trash on my parents here, but sometimes it is hard to have conversations with about say like what's going on now,
Mhm.
sort of in our generation as well. I think it's hard for them to put themselves in our shoes.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so let me ask you this. So obviously you went to Ithaca College for you're double majored in Spanish and in
Mhm.
journalism.
Mhm.
Um, you know, obviously you're well educated and you understand sort of like, what's going on in the world and you're very active with the community. How did that all start though? You know?
I don't know how exactly it started, but I just feel like I was always trying to be involved. So
Okay.
even in high school, I was involved in like all the clubs that I could. Like I just never wanted to be bored. Like I
Okay.
just felt
Yeah.
like if I had free time, I wanted to do something. Did I burn out in high school? Yes. Did I burn out in college? Yes. So now as an adult, I'm trying to not successfully, but I'm trying to like create spaces
Hmm.
where I can do things to the best of my ability and
Yeah.
not burn out. Because if people don't know what burnout means, basically it's like working yourself until you can't do anything
Hmm.
anymore, and then you're not useful to anyone.
Yeah.
So it's just creating that balance. But
Yeah.
yeah, in high school I was super involved. And I really had a passion for writing. I've always loved
Okay.
writing ever since I could learn how to like formulate
Writing.
words, yeah,
Yeah.
and sentences. So, I feel like every at least I don't want to generalize, but at least in my family, education was the most important thing. Like my
Mhm.
mom didn't let me and my sister work throughout high school, only on like breaks and
Okay.
during the summer.
Yeah.
And she was like, you got to focus on education, you got to
Cool.
go to college, you got to get a job. Like that was the linear path of
The
success.
standard of what you
Yeah,
needed to do.
exactly. That was like the standard of success. Like these were the steps that you need to take.
Yeah.
So since I liked writing, I was like, I can't be a writer. I can't be a novelist. They don't make money.
Yeah.
I was like, let me be a journalist. Like, there's
Sure.
always stuff going on in the news. Like, that will get me a job.
Yeah.
So I applied to journalism school.
Okay.
And then even though, like I said, I grew up in Lancaster City, around all the diversity, growing up, I didn't speak Spanish at home.
Okay.
They spoke Spanish to me, but I spoke English
okay.
back to them.
Sure.
And I know some households, like, they're like, we only speak Spanish in the
Yeah.
house. That wasn't the case. So
Okay.
I understand it 90%. Maybe that's a little high, but
Sure.
I understand it. And then I think really the only reason I understand it so much is because we went to church like 3 times a week.
Yeah.
That's a separate issue about religion, but
That's a different conversation,
right,
for sure.
but we went to church and we went to Spanish churches.
Yeah.
So it was like talking to the ancianos and like all the like everybody and listening to the sermons. It was all in Spanish. So I feel like that's where I got my language comprehension of Spanish because I was in those spaces.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't really getting it like at home and then obviously at school.
Well, yeah.
So then going to college, I was like, listen, I am a Latina, and then also going through my identity crisis. I was like, I want to learn Spanish and be able to say I have like a degree in it, and first not have people assume because not everyone that's Latino knows Spanish, which is fine, and it's also a colonizer's language, so it doesn't really matter. But for me, that was something I guess that affirmed my Latinidad or my identity, but also just like knowing another language is a good skill. Yeah, so I was like, I'm going to learn Spanish. So I double majored. And if people that didn't go to college, one major is enough. You don't need to do 2. It was a lot of work.
I'm sure that was, you were very busy, I'm sure.
In college, yeah. In college. And then I created my own clubs in college. Yeah.
Wow.
I was just busy on top of busy. And then I also had my podcast in college. And I worked like 2 jobs. So
oh my gosh.
I was just busy all the time.
Yeah. How'd you have time to breathe? It seemed like you were very busy.
I did. I was like thinking of appropriate things to say. I decompressed.
Okay, there we go. There we go.
With my friends.
Yeah, I see. Of course.
Sometimes at night. Not in my dorm room.
No, everybody needs that space and time for sure.
Right.
But okay, that's so cool. Okay, gotcha. No, it's so interesting for me just to like, because I guess like, let me, I guess, talk about myself a little bit because I can
also,
relate.
Omar and I are strangers. Besides having a shared relative,
this is the first time that we've really met and introduced each other too. So it's a conversation.
Right.
No, so the standard in my house too was education. Like that had to come first. Like no matter what.
Now you're a scientist.
Now I'm a scientist.
Big baller, shot caller.
Now I do research. So it really worked, but. To the point where, my dad was very strong with me on academics and also working as well. He really believed in work, and I had my first job at 16, and I've been working ever since. But to the point where I was actually scared to even get like a B- or something in school. Like it was to that level. And
would you get reprimanded if you had a lower grade?
Yes.
Okay.
Like I could never bring a C, like, and a report card or something. And I never did. So I'm just saying I never did. However, I'd say that a lot of issues stem from that with myself because
putting high expectations. Needing to meet them.
Exactly. And feeling that guilt of like, I'm not doing enough.
Yes.
Right.
That guilt is so real though. I felt that. Real. And then I went to college and I was like, listen, these get degrees. That's all I'm saying.
These get degrees. Listen, the grades aren't on the diploma. So.
Exactly.
Right.
I got that piece of paper. It costs a lot of money.
It costs a lot of money and time and sweat and tears.
Right.
But no, the expectation was really high, and all throughout college. I went to Millersville University, so I was still living at home. I was living with my dad, and so those expectations still continued to that day.
Because there was no separation
There was
too,
no
like in
separation.
college. So like, what's going on?
There was
Are you
no
doing
separation.
Are you doing homework?
Exactly. Not only
Why aren't
that,
you in the
but
library?
not only that, I also worked with my dad. My dad owns an auto
Oh,
repair shop downtown.
okay.
So that stress was always there. We've had a conversation about it. He knows about it. That's why I'm not afraid to talk about it here. But
But that's good you set boundaries too,
yeah.
because I don't know about you, but it took me 23 years to set boundaries with my parents. So like that's like I feel like within Latinidad, that's
Yeah.
another thing where it's
It
like
is, yep.
you need to be so grateful that like you're even alive because I birthed you.
Yo, that's real.
mhm.
That is so real, Sobeida. No, honestly, that yeah. To this day, I still
Yeah. And
I
it's
still
like I
hear
can
that.
be grateful, but I'm an adult and now I need to set boundaries for my mental health and also
Yeah.
yours.
Absolutely. Like you're your own person, right? And I think within Latinidad, it is hard to, I don't know, right? Because being Latino, you think of inwards being very family oriented,
Yep.
and it
You're a
is.
unit. So it's like if you're
Ex-
making money, that money's mine. But I'm
Exactly.
like, okay,
Listen,
but not.
let me hold up here. I went to work, but now I say all of this, and even though there was stress, there was that guilt, which is really real. That really affected me and my mental health for a bit too.
Mhm.
However, I look back now, and I'm grateful for it because it really pushed me to see where I could go, I guess, and what I'm capable of.
Mm.
And I went to school for chemistry. It wasn't easy. It was very demanding major and also just field. But I give thanks to my parents for pushing me because it was a fruitful 4 years. I met a lot of great people, a lot of great scientists, a lot of everything. And I see the fruits of all of that now, just in the position I'm at now, which I'm really grateful and for all the people that have just I've crossed paths with in my life. But it's hard. It's hard, honestly, just having that guilt in a lot of things, for sure.
But also part of the unlearning that
Yeah.
we're doing.
Yeah.
Being okay with like standing our ground and being
Yeah.
firm.
Yeah, I think I didn't learn to do that. I think until honestly like in my like when I turned 20. Honestly, it took me a little bit just because I feel like for the longest time I just wanted to um I don't want to say please everybody, but definitely my parents. And I feel like whatever they said just had to go. And like now as a 24-year-old, it's like actually they're wrong sometimes. I can
Right.
make my own decisions,
You're
but
an adult.
I am an adult. I'm an adult here. But it's true. It's true. It's
It's
there's a
layers,
lot of
man.
things. It's layers. That's what it is. And how you see the world too, I guess. Cuz right, there are people that are also okay with just like in this being in the status quo, I guess. Um but I think yeah, it's hard. It's hard, man. But yeah, so Spanish. So you know Spanish?
Right.
You know Spanish?
So I can read, write,
Uh-huh.
talk in it.
Cool.
Do I do that on the daily? No.
Yeah.
But I try and I did.
Mhm.
And I think again, within the context of like living in the United States, the history
Mhm.
that we learn is like it's oral history if we learn any from like our roots in our
Yeah.
home country.
Yeah.
So when I was studying and paying a lot of money to study Spanish, I was really intentional about the classes I took.
Okay.
And I had this one Puerto Rican professor, Enrique Gonzalez Conti, love you.
Shout out.
I used to call him my uncle because he was the only Puerto Rican in
Oh,
upstate New York.
right. I was gonna say, especially in Ithaca, right? Because
There's-
there's like nothing there,
No.
right?
Well, it's Cornell University,
Right,
and
that-
our small little college. But no, I took all the classes that he had.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Amazing.
And he taught us about, Latin American film
Yeah.
and like all these different themes. And then anytime we had a project, I would either do it on Puerto Rico or Dominican Republic. Because I had access to all these like peer reviewed journals and all this research that I wouldn't otherwise have access to.
Right.
So it was kind of, that education and learning about my culture and my roots. And I learned so much. And also just to have someone that had like their doctorate and they were teaching me like just so much access to information
Yeah.
that otherwise I wouldn't have gotten. if I didn't pursue this. And my sister's kind of doing the same thing.
Cool.
So she's going to school in LaSalle for
LaSalle,
Spanish.
nice. Yeah. And Philly.
And Latin American studies.
Okay.
So it's like, again, trying to root ourselves in our culture as much as possible because we didn't get that learning of our history.
I see. That's that's an interesting point. Let me ask you, have you ever gone to Puerto Rico or the Dominican Republic? No? Okay.
Unfortunately not.
Hey, maybe that's the 2022 thing.
goal.
It's the year. It is the year for everybody.
If the Rona doesn't get me first, I'm trying to go to the islands.
Oh gosh. Yeah, no, it's pandemic. Oh. Anyway, that's a whole other subject too.
Yes.
But I hope you go soon. So I, as we were mentioning off camera, I was born in Puerto Rico, and so
That's so nice. I wish.
And my sister says the same thing. She's born here in Lancaster, and she always tells my sister or my mom, like, I'm so jealous. I'm sorry, Ali. Her name's Ali. So for me, I guess am rooted in sort of like, you know, my roots in Mexico and Puerto Rico. So
for those watching, he's gesturing to the big flags.
Sorry, there are two big flags here. I keep forgetting that this podcast now is on streaming platforms. I'm sorry, guys. I'm pointing to flags, as Sobeida said. So I also give many thanks to my parents. So they would always send my sister and I to Puerto Rico for entire summers. So ever since I was, I don't know, like 3-4 years old up until high school, every summer we'd be in Puerto Rico as a means to just learn, you know, my culture. Obviously, we're from an island thousands of miles away, so to be closer to my family, you know, get to know them better. And also just to do something over the summer. But and I say that just because, I don't know, I think that, like you, of course, like you know, you took the initiative to learn more about the history of, like, you know, where your roots are from, which is amazing. And I, you know, highly encourage anybody, you know, of course, that is Hispanic, I think, to, you know, just kind of look at, you know, where your roots are from. But it's helped me tremendously, I guess, in my own personal life, because I feel that I can connect to, you know, my people. However, I am, like you know, half Puerto Rican, and I'm also half Mexican. Now, here's the caveat. So being both, I feel like I'm neither at the same time, because whenever I'm in Puerto Rico, people only view me as Mexican. Or if I'm in Mexico, people only view me as Puerto Rican.
It's like that age-old phrase, like, ni de aquí, ni de allá.
Exactamente.
And then now we're in America. Or not now, but like we live in the United States. So we're not American because we're not fully white or American white. Si yo voy a Puerto Rico, they're like, what are you doing here? And then si me voy a la República Dominicana, and they're like, what are you doing here?
It's like, then there's a whole other, like, identity thing too. You know, of course, within being Latino in the United States, you know, but also within our own Latinidad, I guess, also, which is really interesting. And honestly, so if I think about it too much, I honestly get sad.
Yeah,
But it's just interesting.
I was talking to a friend how I want to write a book about how Latinidad is fake.
Okay.
I think we are allowed to have our own cultures in our respective countries, and those should be validated, right? But since we are, again, having this blanket term that covers all of us, like when I was in college, some people would know that my last name was Spanish, but other people wouldn't. And actually, funny story, I had a professor that said, I forget what the context was, but he was like, oh, do you have a Spanish name? I was in a group project, and one of the girls' last name was Castillo, and the other one was Villanueva, and I was like, oh, my last name, Rosa. Like, that's how you're supposed to say it. Yeah. And he was like, Rosa, that doesn't count. And I was like, what the fuck?
What?
I was like, what? Yeah. That's crazy, bro.
Oh, my God.
Y'all just don't say my name correctly. It's Sobeida Rosa. Like, that's how you're supposed to say
Also,
it.
I really like your name, by the way. It's very unique. Sobeida Rosa.
The only person that's, like, sort of famous that also has my name is Wilmer Valderrama's mom. So her name is Sobeida.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing.
Because I've Googled my name before. Everyone's like, what does it mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
Girl, I
Listen,
can't tell you.
I don't got the answer for you.
I don't have the answer. But I know it's not super rare, but it's also not
common.
It's not
Right.
Juan or something.
Exactly.
So okay. Or Juana because I'm
right.
Girl.
A girl. So
I'm a woman.
Right. Yeah. So my name too. So Omar is actually my middle name.
Oh.
My first name is Froilan.
And no one can say that.
So no. So growing up
assimilating.
was
assimilation is so crazy.
It is crazy. Like growing up in elementary school, I hated the first day of school or whenever a substitute teacher would come in. It's that pause. And it's like, I am right here. I got it. I know you're like thinking about how to say my name. So I go by Omar, not because of that, just because my dad's also named Froilan.
Okay.
Froilan. And also.
So you're a junior?
So.
You're a second?
Yes and no. I guess because he has a different middle name than like he's not Omar.
Okay.
So I don't know if like you have to have the full actual name to be a junior, but I guess I'm a junior. But yeah, Omar's my middle name, and Froilan is just an interesting name because it's actually not it's not common either.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you look at the origin of that name, I think it's like even German or something like that. I think I don't even know, either German or just some like Spanish, from like Spain. But anyway,
I like to say Spanish just to make
Spanish.
To make the distinction.
You know what? I'm gonna start doing that. I've never heard that. Actually,
Omar's just copying me.
Literally. Thank you. I'm gonna write that down. Spain.
Since maybe not this, I feel like I'm always scatterbrained, but I think there's a point here.
It's all good.
Since Squid Games came out, I feel like my Netflix has been the algorithm has been showing me more international shows.
Yeah.
And I've been seeing a lot of Spanish shows because they're from Spain.
Yeah.
So that's when I use it because I've been telling people, I'm like, I'm watching all these reality shows. Like I watched a Korean one and I watch a Spanish one. Because if I say Spanish, they're like, what? Or
like
not really. Like, they're not thinking too deep about it. I am.
But you're thinking about it too deep.
And I took a Spanish Latinx film course, like I said. And most of majority of the movies that are made that are in the Spanish language are from Mexico or Spain because those are where the big blockbuster places are.
Studios.
Yeah, the studios. So they're rooted, in those cultures. And then Spanish people have the lisp, which I have.
I have. Yeah.
No hate to them, but also what?
But like what exactly? It's like what?
What are you doing?
It's really I still am not used to listening to their lisp. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So your college years. We kind of touched on the podcast. When did you start that, and what led you to create that space for yourself?
That's an interesting story. So I was at. I'm gonna tell the story, and you can decide.
That's fine.
I was at a party.
Okay. People go to parties. It's all good.
It was the part. So at my school, we had the school newspaper, but we also did online content.
Cool.
So it was podcasting and then video, multimedia. So I somehow was at the end of the year party for the fall semester, and I was talking to the editor in chief.
Okay.
And she was just like, "Oh, we're looking for people to have podcasts," and I was like, "I could have a podcast," and I just pitched her my podcast at this party, and then 2 weeks later, or when we came back for the spring semester, they had sent me the application in the inbox to apply. So that's how I got it, and my pitch was literally at this party, I feel like not the place to pitch
a podcast.
Anything. Yeah, a podcast. But I was like, listen, I would talk about my name and how it's important to me, and I would bring diverse perspectives. So on that podcast, I had one of my friends' she has a very African name.
Okay.
And then I had one of my friends, and they're trans, and their name is so important to them because they got to choose it, and that's how they choose to identify.
Yeah.
So needless to say, I had the podcast and I got it.
Now hold up. Now at this party though, did you already have this in mind, or is this just right at that moment?
Right. It just came
right
to
there.
I just started talking, and then I pitched it.
Listen,
and then
the
they
stars
loved it.
aligned
They
at that party
aligned
right there.
perfectly.
What?
Off the cuff, I was
That's awesome. Okay.
I was like, I don't know if it was awesome, but it was something that I did and it worked.
And it worked.
And I liked it because it was like a production through the
Mhm.
school. So we had
That's cool.
access. Like Ithaca College has one of the greatest like film and like communication schools. So we had
Amazing.
all the equipment that we needed.
Yeah.
And I also didn't have to edit it, which was nice. But then
It can be a pain.
yeah. Editing's a lot. Like you could be there for hours.
Takes hours
Just
sometimes.
to edit
for
2
sure.
minutes.
Yeah. No, for real.
So the pandemic happened, obviously, and then I also graduated. But people were like, I love your podcast. Like, I loved what you were doing. So I was like, oh, let me try to do it independently.
Cool.
It's been a rough start, but I enjoy it and I still like doing it.
Cool.
I also like talking, not about myself, but about these topics with other people.
You're passionate about it.
Exactly. So it's like one of my passion projects. But it does take a lot of time to like set up the date, the interview, like make sure all the audio's good, and then to edit it and then to upload it to platforms. So
there's a lot that goes behind it and behind the scenes for sure.
And mine is just an audio podcast. So this one's like also visual.
Audio and video.
Yeah.
Of course. No, that's amazing. That's really great to hear. Yeah, I think for me with this project, this podcast, I've I guess always had the desire to do something within like the the Latino community here in Lancaster specifically. I just didn't know what that looked like, because at the same time, working at my dad's shop where most of his clientele are Hispanics. So, I interacted with them, learned their stories, just kind of waiting for their cards to be done and stuff like that. So I love to hear people's stories. I think it's important. But I think that there hasn't necessarily been sort of a platform. Maybe there is. I feel like you might know. I'd say a platform, I guess, just to kind of sit down and just have a conversation, and so the world, can kind of get a better perspective. But this all happened in Madison, Wisconsin. Sort of what I was telling you, where I had sort of like not an identity crisis, but I felt like alone, being the only Hispanic around. And I was like, you know what? I also kind of wanted to do a podcast. I didn't know of what. I'm really passionate about music. I also produce. Find me on Spotify.
Yeah, you said you were a DJ. You
I was
like
a DJ. Yeah, you can't see it, people who are listening to from Spotify. But I got my turntables right here. I started DJing back in high school up until college, and then I stopped once I moved to grad school. But so coming back to Lancaster, I came back in December of 2020. That's when I moved back.
What a time!
What a time to be alive. It was interesting. It was hard. But coming back, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. Let's just do a podcast. Sit down with Hispanics, and just give them a platform to talk about themselves and sort of like their experiences within the world, and also, of course, here in Lancaster. But yeah, that's how I started. I guess it's just a combination of just like wanting to do something, surrounding myself with Latinos, but also networking and also, doing a podcast.
Networking, the most important part.
Oh yeah. 100%. 100%. So that's your podcast. Of course, I'm sure we'll have a new episode drop shortly maybe.
Hopefully you'll be on it.
Oh, I would be honored. Thank you. I'd be honored. For sure. So obviously I do this podcast, but I've never been a guest to another podcast. So it'll be a first for me. Absolutely. But so yeah, let's talk about Lang for Change.
Yes.
So yeah, you're a co-founder.
I am.
So tell me a little bit about it, how it came to be, because I'm really interested actually.
Yeah. So the full title, I guess, is called Lancaster Changemakers Collective. So people call it Lancaster Changemakers or Changemakers or Lang for Change. So we have a bunch of iterations of the name, but the Lancaster Changemakers Collective started around the time of the George Floyd protests. And for those who don't know, maybe this is the future and everyone's forgotten about it, but
Yeah.
So basically George Floyd was a man in Minneapolis that was killed by police. I think I don't know if it was either because the bill was fake or they said he used a check that bounced, but
something like that.
Basically, It was a transaction that went wrong, and then it culminated in his death of an officer putting his knee on his neck for, I think it was like 8 minutes.
Something ridiculous like that.
6 to 8 minutes around there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like, what, the height of COVID?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're still all in lockdown. He was just trying to get groceries.
Yeah.
It's this black man. He has a family, and he died.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole world kind of like was up in arms. Like, it wasn't even just the U.S. There were Black Lives Matter protests all over the world.
Yes.
And I think it reignited the movement for a lot of people. But for Black people, the discrimination was always there. It didn't go away because white people stopped looking at us dying.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot for like 2 weeks. That's all the news talked about. That's all everybody talked about. And like living as a person during that time for me was like very much like I was on edge for 2 weeks. Like, imagine being like so anxiety driven, like the worst anxiety you've ever had, but for 2 weeks straight. And that was how I was feeling. I was feeling stressed. I was like, that could be my dad, that could be my cousin, that could be my uncle. I was feeling helpless, like I couldn't do anything, and I was like, what can I do? So I reached out to my friend who also went to McCaskey, Brian Graves, and they were like, yeah, let's do something. So we started a Facebook group called Lancaster Changemakers Collective, and we were just asking people for their input, and just creating space in the community to say, hey, like, we need to do something. We need to make sure things like that don't happen here, and maybe put some policies in place. And so a lot of people were really interested in it and really active, and like, we didn't really organize any of the protests, but we like helped put them up on our platforms, which is mainly Instagram. But we also have Twitter, and then we have a website, and we also have a Facebook page.
Okay, cool.
In addition to the Facebook group. So yeah, we just helped organize a lot of things. We did like a community lunch where we had like just free food donated from a bunch of like small businesses.
Yeah.
And that was in Reservoir Park. We did these changemaker chats, which are like over Zoom. We discuss a topic. So we talked about performative activism, and the whole like reason or idea behind this group was to create a community organization. So it's POC led, but it's not for us to be doing everything. It's for the community to get involved.
Right.
Now, once the like trendiness of Black Lives Matter stopped, so did a lot of the community engagement.
Sure.
And Brian and I are still doing our best efforts to, kind of keep it going and do what we can. But we're also recognizing that we're only two people that work, two people that have lives. And also this work is emotionally exhausting.
I'm sure.
So we're doing as best as we can, again, without trying to burn out or without we can only do so much if the community doesn't help.
Yeah.
But
it goes both ways, right?
Right. And it definitely needs we need a lot of people to pour into it as much as we're trying to give out. But our whole thing, right, is focused on education.
Right.
So we like these changemaker chats because one of the things we were seeing during the protests is it was a lot of white people just like having white guilt and just being like, I'm sorry for being white. And it's like, we're glad that you're sorry, I guess, but that's not the issue.
Right.
The issue is recognizing your privilege and weaponizing it for underrepresented groups or marginalized groups. So I think that's what we wanted to focus on, is just like empowerment through education, and that's what we try to do. So on our Instagram, we'll try to like create those informational slide graphics with any current events, and we also try to uplift other marginalized voices. But again, it's only us two, so it's a lot.
I was gonna say, I mean, like, if you look at the Instagram, and I highly encourage everybody to do so, it's really well organized. Like everything that you have on the website, and also like in the Instagram and everything. And I didn't know it was just like you two. Like before I knew that you started that, I thought it was like a whole collective of people. But you guys,
that's what we want.
Yeah, that's what you. And I hope that you get to that point. But that's crazy. That's only you two doing that. Wow, I can understand why it could be a little overwhelming when perhaps not a lot of people engage back. Let me know if you need any help.
For sure.
I would love to help out any way I can. So then this started in 2020 then,
Yep.
right? Okay. And so I guess what are the plans for that, I guess, in 2022?
Yeah, so in 2022, we definitely want to stick to more education. I think we want to make Changemaker chats regular.
Okay.
So
And that's open to the public?
yeah, so
Okay.
it's just like a free Zoom. Like all you have to do is sign up when we have it, and then we'll send you the link via email, or we'll post it. So we also have like a link tree and stuff like that. So we'll make it readily available, but it's for everyone.
Yeah.
The last ones that we had were in November of 2021.
Okay.
We had it for Indigenous Peoples Month, and we did like a mini series where we highlighted like Jim Thorpe. So he's an Indigenous person from the Pennsylvania, not from the Pennsylvania area, but he was like an Olympian. Like he did so many cool things, but he was like an athlete, an Olympian. He played football, but then he also did track, I think.
Oh my gosh.
So there's actually a place in PA called Jim Thorpe, named after him.
Okay.
And then his body was buried here. So like that's, yeah. But so we highlighted him and his background history. We also talked about missing, murdered Indigenous women and Two-Spirit peoples. And we did like a little Changemaker chat on that.
Yeah.
It wasn't well attended, but we recorded it. And we do need to upload them to YouTube. But
cool.
we also, did those Instagram slides as well to let people know. Because again, that unlearning or that educating yourself also extends to other identities that I don't hold, right? So we're trying to do it, but again, it's like
it's hard.
It's hard. It's definitely hard to balance, right? It's hard to balance. So trying to find that balance, but also wanting to keep up with the community, but definitely want to make those a monthly thing. Yeah. We're also looking into having what's it called? Like movie
nights?
Yeah, like not movie screenings.
Yes.
So Brian independently does Pride Surprise, which is like a month where each week you view a different movie and it has to do with something about the LGBTQ community, and then there's a discussion afterwards.
Okay.
So we want to do something similar or adopt Pride Surprise and then also do movie screenings, COVID friendly and safe and everything.
Yeah.
But just basically have discussions with people in the community.
Yeah.
Around a topic, around a movie, around a book. So, and I think those are kind of, low maintenance things that both of us can handle. And then we want to make those continuous so we have some continuity going forward.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, Sobeida. No, well, thank you for honestly doing this for the community. I think it's very important to have it be like a community-led thing, but also taking the time to educating the community as well. I think is very important, especially here in Lancaster. And I really look forward to what you guys have in store for 2022. And of course, if you guys need any help, you have my back. I'd love to be involved as much as I can. But yeah, Sobeida, I think we're close to an hour now. Time flies.
It does.
But I guess to wrap this up, we talked about, Lang for Change, your podcast, sort of a little bit about yourself. So what is 2022? What does 2022 have in store for you?
I don't know, Omar. I'm going with the flow right now. But yeah, I started a new job. So for the past year, I worked at a nonprofit that focused on immigrant advocacy within the Latino population and also the African population. Yeah. So that was really rewarding work. And as I said, I studied journalism and Spanish. So in that job, I got to use my journalism skills, but I'm not actively a journalist. But that's okay because, I have this, I guess, activist spirit in me. So I'm always trying to do better for the community. So with that organization, CASA, they work out of Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. So they're helping Latinos all across those spaces. And they're doing great work. They also do legislative work with their C4. So if you're not familiar with nonprofits, C3s are nonpartisan or bipartisan, nonpartisan. And C4s are like very much more political. Okay. So they're doing great work. And now I have transitioned into a new position where I work at the Touchstone Foundation, which is hyper local to Lancaster County. And we work on youth mental wellness. So one of our big goals is to increase access to mental health care in the county. So we support like students that are studying sociology, psychology, psychiatry through scholarships. So our
Amazing.
Scholarships are open right now. They're due May 15th.
Okay.
We also have a clinician collaborative. So if people need hours to get their licensure for being a social worker or a therapist, I believe, we also have that group. And we have a mental health copay assistance program where people in need from, baby to 26 years old, if you're on your parents' insurance, it's only $10 to see a therapist. And then you just have to sign up on our website.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing work.
Thank you. So doing youth mental health, youth mental wellness, and before I was doing immigration advocacy.
Right.
And then on the side, I do Lancaster Changemakers.
Right,
so,
course. Yeah, really busy, really busy, really busy. But take some time for yourself too, though.
Exactly.
Make time for yourself. It's very important. Cool. I think we'll wrap it up. Do you want to give a shout out to anybody? I guess for some space. If you want to give thanks to anybody, I don't know.
Shout out to Omar for reaching out to me and having me on this podcast.
No, thank you.
I really enjoyed my time here in the conversation.
Thank you, Sobeida. I would love to have you back at some point in the future, of course. And,
for sure.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and talk about sort of what you got going on in your life and what you're involved in. And I think that I'm looking forward to seeing all of that flourish in 2022. So thank you everybody for watching. This is episode 6 with Sobeida Rosa. Thank you again for coming and chatting with me today. Make sure to like, subscribe, share this, please. I need your help to spread the word. I have great content coming your way, hopefully soon. Just thank you again for taking some time.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And until next time, peace.